This is a race against time. Amuro barely survived re-entry and has just crawled back aboard from the white base's rear deck. But when he reaches the bridge, a Zeon flight group led by a GA attack carrier has climbed to the stratosphere to intercept white base. They finally shook Char's Musai and hoped to dash for the Federation's Jaburo base, only to relax too soon. Because Char's strategy drove them into Zeon-controlled airspace and, worse, into a huge main force, not just Char's small detachment closing in on them. No one knows how to survive. To raise their odds, Bright Noah, Amuro, Hayato Kobayashi, even Lieutenant Reed rack their brains. Amuro deploys at once. As he passes Frabo, she hands him a nutrient drink. "It's all I can do. Drink it in the cockpit." He gulps it down. Without it, after who knows how long in combat, Amuro would likely be depleted, on the verge of anemia or dizziness. But Fra's quick thinking gives his brain a jolt of fuel. Watching in near real time like this reveals a lot. Ready? This is session 13 of the Mobile Suit Gundam seminar. Enjoy the latter half of Garma Strikes at a relaxed pace. Another key relationship is Bright Noah versus Lieutenant Reed. Guidebooks often call him Captain Reed, but he's a lieutenant. By the way, Bright at this point doesn't even have a rank. He's simply Bright, the officer candidate. There's a wartime field commission system. Senior on scene can confer rank during combat. Even with that, Bright's slot would be around warrant officer, just below second lieutenant, I'd say. So Lieutenant Reed outranks him on paper. Yet Bright by Captain Paulo Cassius's order has operational command of White Base. That's because of the senior officer present rule. It's a naval term, the officer with the earliest date of rank. Armies don't use it. Navies do. In land warfare, when a commander dies, the unit immediately radios headquarters for instructions. They grab the set. HQ, HQ. The CO is down. What are our orders? Because the Army is a strict top-down chain, if a leader falls, you contact higher HQ for direction. That assumes you're on land with friendly units and radio reach. That's the Army mindset. Navies, and likely Space Forces, operate differently. A single ship may be alone. If the bridge is hit and the captain, XO, chiefs all die in a cascade, the senior present rule becomes crucial. You find whoever is the highest grade left, even if only corporals or sergeants remain. Among surviving sergeants, the one promoted earliest, like the, quote, oldest brother in a troop, takes charge with full authority. So when Captain Paolo told Bright, "You run the ship," his exact commission mattered less. He became White Base's senior officer present. He isn't captain, but he's acting captain aboard White Base. By contrast, Lieutenant Reed merely took refuge after his shuttle was shot up. So even as a lieutenant, in pure military terms, he sits below Bright's acting captain authority. Reed is just a higher-ranked guest. If they had contact with Federation High Command, HQ would have named Reed captain in a heartbeat. But after leaving Luna 2, White Base had zero contact until General Revel, no orders, no appointments. Thus, the senior present rule keeps Bright as acting captain, while Lieutenant Reed is essentially a passenger. Remember Episode 1? Captain Paolo spoke politely to Temray, Amuro's father. Same vibe here. You can't treat Reed roughly, but Bright bears responsibility for White Base. Still, it's provisional, and Bright was a student until recently. Reed naturally tries to take charge and issues orders. Bright refuses to yield command, hence the friction. Watching Gundam as an adult, you notice this. Reed seems a nagging jerk bossing everyone, with the crew reluctantly obeying. As a student back then, I read it as adults versus kids. But the show handles it deftly. The senior present rule quietly governs their dynamic. Hence the odd, ambiguous chain of command. Reed then orders a Guntank launch. There's a reason. Let me show the next chart. At this moment, White Base, soon to drop lower, is under attack by Zeon aircraft. You can see Earth's curve below. That's stratospheric altitude. A huge GA attack carrier is targeting White Base. The GA cruises in the stratosphere, around 10 to 20 kilometers out of reach of most AA guns or missiles. White Base, though through the atmosphere, is still up, where even Japan's World War II fighters struggle to climb after B-29 superfortresses. Combat begins up there. Zeon's view and Reed's read go like this. Assume this is the ground. White Base is here, the GA at similar height. But White Base must descend. Once it does, the GA stays high above the clouds, outside White Base's effective range. Meanwhile, the GA keeps dropping fighters to strike closer to White Base. White Base can shoot back at fighters, but it can't touch the GA far above. The stalemate drags on. So Reed thinks, deploy the Guntank. Its cannons are extremely long-rangeable to hit the GA directly. Fighting the inbound fighters with mobile suits won't end this. You must hit the enemy mothership. Hence the Guntank sortie. Reed doesn't bother explaining tactics to the kids. So viewers are left asking, why Guntank? Cue the conversion scene to Guntank. For the first time, we learn the belly aircraft, the core fighter, is shared by Gundam, gun cannon, and Guntank, and can recombine while pilots remain aboard. We kind of guessed from the opening and from Clover's Chogokin TV ads touting 3 forms, but this is the first in-show reveal. Officially announced here. Amuro launches in the Guntank. Later, at the Belfast base in Britain, he'll sortie in the gun cannon. Why? I long wondered. Reading Tomina's biography, I finally got it. He promised the sponsor toy company to honor all requests. Likely, he pledged, the hero Amuro will ride all 3. Gundam, gun cannon, and Guntank. So here he quietly rides Guntank. Later, he quietly rides gun cannon, fulfilling hero uses all 3 mecha. But Reed misread one thing. Zeon also had ground forces deployed. That's hard to foresee, because until now they'd only fought Char's lone light cruiser. He assumed the same scale. Instead, upon descent, Zeon's Earth Theater commander, young Garma Zabi of the Zabi family, greets Char, takes his intel, and mounts a massive assault. No one could predict that. White base figures escape those fighters, hug the terrain, use mountains as cover, and were safe. But to their shock, tanks are massed on the ground too. They're trapped. Land and you're pummeled by tanks. Climb and the carrier and fighters hit you. Classic pincer. Worse, air and ground differ in firepower. Aircraft have payload limits. Ground units can haul hefty guns and tons of ammo. Their punch is on another level. Dropping into that envelope makes White Base a sitting duck. Remember, White Base had struggled with just Char's 1 ship. This is their first true multi-pronged set-piece engagement. It's a full-blown crisis. Amuro sorties, but he and others clash. Hayato, riding with him in the Guntank, says, if we stay in front of White Base, the enemy will press a steady attack. Obvious, but true. He means, pull away and split their fire. Amuro snaps back, we can't leave White Base. I'll punch through and open an escape route. While they argue, the enemy attack. Bright cuts in with a sudden call, his tone totally different. Bright. Amuro, this is Bright. I'm asking you. Guntank can't handle Magella attack tanks. Can you switch to Gundam? Please use Gundam. Amuro. Mr. Bright, the first time you... Bright, please, Ryu will operate the Guntank. Amuro, Bright. He says the second Bright, much softer. Same line, first sharp, almost scolding. After Bright says, please, Amuro softens. Bright. For the first time, he re-examines the tactic he'd stubbornly clung to. In Gundam, growth happens in split-second choices on the battlefield. Bright's near-apologetic plea wasn't his usual tone. It was a spur-of-the-moment battlefield transmission. And Amuro's change of heart dropping his fixation also happens in an instant. Most dramas use inner monologues or calm reflection. Gundam shows psychology through sudden combat decisions. That's why it can be hard to catch. Then Hayato says, Amuro Bright is right. Against Magella attacks, Amuro thinks, maybe I fight better solo. Even now he's thinking, if I'm only gonna argue with Hayato, I'd fight better alone. He radios, Roger. Let Kai or Sayla pilot Guntank. Sayla can do it. Then mutters, so we're really the ones getting beaten down. And strategically, Hayato was right. Amuro is too stubborn about his own idea. When Guntank returns to White Base, Amuro sprints toward Gundam. No time to recombine the core fighter. Amuro, run! Sayla urges. Roger, he answers, jumping out just as Kai dashes past. Amuro, you'll take it? Kai, got any better options? If Kai were just a jerk, he could say anything here. It's your screw-up, or leave it to me. Many lines would fit. But got any better options? Mirrors Amuro's own usual. Like Amuro's, I don't fight because I want to. I have no choice. Kai tosses off a casual, grown-up, it is what it is. He's saying you don't owe me, we're all forced into this. Refusing to say, leave it to May, is Kai's pride. Frabo is waiting. Drink this nutrients. Amuro downs it in one go. She says, it's all I can do. Amuro answers, later, near episode's end, he'll be aloof again. But mid-battle Amuro gets amped, and is actually quite decent. When Fra says do your best, Amuro waves back without looking, still running, a stylish bit of animation. Crew members shout, go get him! We're counting on you! Amuro slips into Gundam's cockpit. His entry is gorgeous. Feet first, a quick rotate over the seat, drop, click-click on the belts. It's drawn so well the series reuses this cut many times. Watch for it. While belting in, he overhears Sayla and Ryu on comms. Sayla, Ryu, if you're not confident, it's okay. Ryu, no choice. Amuro sees Ryu's core fighter blast off. He instantly sulks. It's not like I'm confident either. Sayla, Amuro, did you say something? Amuro flusters. Negative Amuro, Gundam launching. Sayla replies, don't rush. Stand by until Guntank launch. Amuro gripes. See? This is all of it. Nothing goes his way. That mutual misfire continues. Gundam moves hearts with those rapid swings, moments of connection, then back to misalignment. Okay, that's the end of the free portion of our Episode 6 Garma Strikes breakdown. This is the catalog for Yoshiyuki Tomino's exhibition, The World of Yoshiyuki Tomino, now at the Fukuoka Art Museum, pricey at 4,000 yen before tax. Why here? I carried it back as a giveaway. One viewer whose letter is read on the next Nikoniko Live will win it. There are other gifts and stickers too. You've still got time. Send your messages. Today we opened with the Bright vs. Reed Chain of Command issue. That wartime provisional commissioning. The senior present rule. Gundam's world is complex. Even by episode 6 you still need this baseline world building. When I once said, Bright is the highest military man aboard White Base, some replied, Ryu and other soldiers are there too. True, but not. Ryu is also an officer candidate, but along a separate pilot candidate track. And all those soldiers you see in engineering, etc., are likely technical officers, manufacturer liaisons, or medical officers, i.e., doctors or cooks. They aren't line officers, so they can't be made captain. Even if most are down, as long as one line officer survives, the appointment must come from that line. You sometimes see a wounded soldier coaching missile procedures, but he's injured. Wounded or ill personnel who can't serve fully aren't candidates to assume command. So a 6 months out of academy kid, Bright Noah, ends up acting captain. That's how abnormal White Base is. Director Yoshiyuki Tomino, born in 1941, naturally knew Army-Navy differences. He carries those instincts into space, part of what makes the first Gundam series so intriguing. From here it's the paid section. We cut to Zeon. Inside the GA attack carrier, an intriguingly loaded exchange between Dren and Char opens the back half. Alright, ready? Please begin the second half of the lecture.